Hi there, Chris, Chapman account, Motolegends. Today we're going to talk about a boot from TCX. It's an important boot for TCX because it's a boot that's going to replace the ever popular X Blend. It's a boot called the Blend 2. There's a problem faced by every brand owner, whatever industry they're in. And that problem is, when the time comes, how do you replace a successful product? Because let's face it, nothing lasts forever. No product can remain indefinitely unchanged. Every product, so to speak, has a natural life. But yet, at the same time, it's dangerous to mess with a winning formula. And that's because the replacement product might not hit the spot in the way that the old product did. So we saw this in this industry with Hal Varsons a few years ago. They had a fantastically successful jacket called the Prime jacket. They replaced it with the Veen jacket. They got lucky, or maybe they didn't get lucky, they just did it right, because the Veen jacket proved to be even better than the Prime jacket. There were no issues there. This year, and we're recording this in 2021, Rucker are going to have that problem with the Nivala suit. Now, Nivala is just the most wonderful laminated suit. It's got lots of stretching, beautiful and comfortable to wear, but that is being discontinued. There's going to be a new suit next year, and we, and indeed Rucker, are concerned about whether the new suit is going to be as popular. And so it is for the Italian boot brand TCX. Now, their short boot called the X Blend has been the market leader for many years now, but TCX felt, probably rightly, that it needed a refresh. That boot is here now, but there's no telling really whether that new boot is going to find favour in the way that the old boot did. We've seen the new boot. In fact, we've had time to get to know it. This last week, we were actually only allowed one boot. I think the other sample was off with another dealer, but we had one boot. But I've spent most of the week walking around the office with an X Blend on one foot and the new boot, which is called the Blend 2, on the other foot. So I've been able to develop some views about it. But even so, we don't know how well that new boot is going to be received by consumers. But before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about the enduring appeal of the outgoing boot, the X Blend itself. TCX's X Blend boot was never popular because it was the cheapest option out there. It was never the most expensive boot on the market, but there were many boots that were cheaper. Its popularity came, I feel, from a number of factors. Firstly, it looked the part. It's a boot that one would say the proportions were just correct. In fact, one might even say it was a handsome boot. The leather, it's got to admit, was not the thickest of any boot out there, or indeed the best quality. But this was a boot that just looked right. In this brown colour, this kind of mottled colour, it had a grungy look, a slightly grungy look that was popular with bikers. The black boot had a flatter finish, but again, lots of credibility with this boot. The spec was acceptable to just about everyone. Boot had a waterproof membrane, not a Gore-Tex membrane, but nonetheless a waterproof membrane. You have reinforcing counters in the toe, the heel, the ankles. Got a sewn-on gear change pad, a sturdy oil-resistant sole. In every way, this was a proper bike boot. Okay, in the margin, it was no Rucker or Daytona in terms of quality, but it had and has the rugged looks of a Caterpillar boot or something like a Timberland boot. But what made the boot so popular in our view was that it fitted so many people so well. This was about as comfortable as a bike boot could get. And I'm not talking about comfortable after many months of wearing them in, I'm talking about comfortable right out of the box. Given what the boot was, price was never an issue. $169.99 in our view meant you were getting a lot of boot for the money. In fact, I think we would contend that this was about the best value boot on the market. So this is the new boot, the Blend 2. This is the old boot, the X Blend. The brief that TCX gave to its designers was very much to keep the DNA of the old boot, but improve upon it wherever possible to address any shortcomings of the X Blend. That was quite a tall order because, as we've implied, there was nothing much wrong with the old boot. But let's talk through the new boot, and we'll talk about where we think TCX have got it right, and maybe in those areas where we'll also discuss the areas where we think they haven't. One of the things is we don't think that the new boot is as pretty, as handsome, as well proportioned as the old boot. In comparison, I think it looks just a little bit clumsy. And that's partly to do with this larger, higher toe box. Maybe it's there because it's a stronger toe box and it's going to make the boot a little bit more protective, but it does give the boot a slight more of a construction worker look. The other thing that we don't like is the way in which the gusset or the tongue here is exposed. It looks to us as though the quarters don't come round far enough, because this is how you would normally expect a boot to be laced. You've got very little of the tongue showing, but there's a wide expanse of tongue showing here. And what happens is when you've got this boot on and it's done up, it looks as though it's undone. Now, as I've mentioned already, I've been wearing these boots around the office, and if you look right now, I've got an X Blend on one foot, I've got a Blend 2 on the other foot. They're both exactly the same size, but the Blend 2 looks as though my foot is too big for it. It looks as though I can't lace it up properly. That's not the case. Both boots are comfortable. The size is the same in both cases, but it's just a different look. Now, we've spoken to TCX about this, and they have a reason for doing it this way. There is a rationale, and it's that short boots can, for some people, be just too fiddly to do up, because if you've got to come and do the laces up through the eyelets at the top of the shaft, that can take a bit of time. But what they've done here, by giving us a wider gusset, they have allowed the boot, or made the boot, easier to do and undo. So that makes perfect sense. I can see why they've done it. We just don't think it looks as good. In terms of the leather used on the boots, some people felt that the leather on the X Blend was not thick enough. We never had a problem with that, but what we can say is that on this new boot, the Blend 2, the leather does look a little bit thicker, a little bit stronger, a little bit more robust perhaps. But it's actually quite difficult to know what's going on, because this boot has a much thicker padding. The Blend 2 has much thicker padding around the shaft than does the old boot, and we can't really work out whether the leather really is thicker. The only thing we could do is cut out the lining and then measure the leather, but we can't do that because this is the only sample in the country right now, and I don't think TCX would be particularly pleased. The leather that they've used is the same as they've used on the X Blend. In other words, it's an oiled leather. It's what's called a pull-up leather, so that's an aniline leather that's then coloured and then sealed with an oil or a wax. So the boots look very similar in terms of their finish. These boots are designed very much to mark, so once you wear them, once you get a mark or a scratch on it, that's just part of the appeal of the boot. It will develop its own patina. In terms of the spec, the boots are pretty similar. So they've both got a waterproof membrane. I'm going to just bring up the black one here. They've both got a waterproof membrane, not a Gore-Tex membrane, but a membrane that works perfectly well. By and large, TCX boots don't leak. The water ingress is not an issue. What you need to remember, of course, is with a short boot, water is going to find it easier to get in over the shaft of the boot than would be the case with a tall boot. So it's not going to be completely waterproof, but that's the same. It has that in common with every short boot. You've got counters in the toe, in the heel, and in the ankles. In this boot, the counters are pucks from D30, so that's good. The new boot has a debossed gear change. So rather than have a sewn-on pad as we had with the X Blend, we have this pattern here. Not sure how I feel about that really, in that you've not got a second layer of leather over the toe, and at times that second layer can be helpful because it's an extra protection for the leather on the boot. But what happens now and again, that leather panel on the X Blend 2, that would come off, so at least this cannot remove itself from the boot, as it were. In terms of comfort inside, I've mentioned this boot's got a padded shaft. You've got an Ortholite insole, that's a changeable sole, but nice and comfortable. The sole itself is called a ground track sole. That's a name that's just made up by TCX, it's their own sole, but we've seen that now on a number of boots. It's a perfectly good sole, it's oil and slip resistant, so it's a pretty tough boot. Our conclusion in terms of the Blend 2, is the new boot more rugged? Well, potentially. We have to say that we preferred in some ways the looks of the old boot, the X Blend. In terms of comfort, well, as I've said, I've been wearing both. I can't tell at this point in time whether one boot is more comfortable than the other. I think certainly this boot, as I was wearing it, that needed a little bit more wearing in, but it's soon bedded in. It's a comfortable boot. What we're going to have to see, though, is what our customers think, because whatever we think here, whatever I believe when I'm walking around the office, that's pretty immaterial. Over time, our customers will tell us whether they find this boot as comfortable as the X Blend. We know that the X Blend was universally popular, both here in the shop, but people who came back into the shop would say, these are some of the most comfortable boots I've ever had. Only time will tell whether that's going to be the case with the Blend 2. In terms of price, the old boot, the X Blend, was $169.99. as is the way of the world, this boot is more expensive. It's £20 more expensive, £189.99. I still think that's in the ballpark. I still think it's going to prove to be a good value boot. If you'd like to see more TCX boots, visit the website motolegends.com. If you want to learn more about the particular boot that we've been talking about today, then if you click on one of the links on the screen, sometimes they're up there, sometimes they're down there, that will take you to a dedicated page on the website. Now, when you're there, you can check out the spec in a little bit more detail, you can check availability, and obviously if you want to buy a pair of these boots, you can do that there and then. When you do buy from us, we try to make the process simple, straightforward and risk-free as we possibly can. There's no delivery charge on any item of protected wear that you buy from us. Returns are totally free, and what's more, we give you a full 12 months in which to decide whether you do want to return something to us. We have the best price promise in the motorcycle business. Now, John Lewis was rightly famed for its never knowingly undersold price promise. We go one stage better. If you can find anybody selling anything that we sell at a price that is lower than ours, we will beat that competitor's price by a full 10%. Now, there are a few terms and conditions associated with what we call our price beat. So if you are going to price beat us, go over to the web and you can check out what those terms and conditions are. Nothing particularly onerous. If in future you'd like to see bulletins from us about new products, then if you go to the website, top of every page there's a piece of script that says newsletter sign up. Click on there, within seconds you'll be in business. In future you'll receive our email bulletins. However, if you would like to get your information, if you would prefer to get your information videographically, that is to say in this form, then we would be simply delighted if you want to become a subscriber to our YouTube channel, and you can do that by clicking on the button below. Now, this is 2021. In 2020, we gave away to one of our YouTube subscribers a Mutt 125cc motorbike. We'd customized it a little bit to look like a Steve McQueen desert sled. This year we've gone a little bit up market. We're going to be giving away a 250cc Fantic Caballero Scrambler. But we are not going to be giving it away to a YouTube subscriber, but rather to somebody who follows us on Facebook. So if you want to stand a chance of winning this fabulous little bike, and we're going to be giving it away just before Christmas this year, then go over to Facebook and obviously follow us. Finally, I'd like to make a play for our fabulous little shop here at Motolegends. It's a small shop. We're based about a mile away from the centre of Guildford, a mile from the railway station. And even though the shop has a smallish footprint, as I've alluded to, it is attached to our warehouse where we have more than £2 million worth of stock arranged over 3 floors. Technically, that makes this the second largest motorcycle apparel shop in the UK. But we think we are far more than just the amount of merchandise we have here in the building. We're all about service, we're all about personal fitting. If you want to check us out, visit Trustpilot. We have the highest ranking in the business. When you come and see us, we'll only serve you the finest Italian illy coffee, or we'll serve you proper Yorkshire tea in a proper teapot. And who knows, if you're lucky, you might even get to sample one of Sean's mum's delicious shortbread biscuits. Shaped like a motorcycle, by the way. Anyway, this has been Chris. I hope to talk to you again soon.